Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. Just over 2 weeks have passed since the death of George Floyd while in police custody. A death that saw 4 Minneapolis police officers arrested and sparked protests all over the nation, some of them even turning violent. Well, today, Floyd's family and loved ones finally got the chance to say goodbye. We'll get to that in just a moment, but first, one man is in custody tonight after driving through a scene, knocking over cones and dragging a firefighter nearly 100 yards in Billings. That incident happening around 8:15 this evening on Bench Boulevard near Joyce Circle in the Billings Heights. According to Sergeant Brett Becker, a 23-year-old man drove through the scene as firefighters were blocking off part of Bench Boulevard while the power company worked on a transformer. The driver then hit and dragged a firefighter approximately the length of a football field before being stopped by other firefighters on scene. The driver, whose name has not yet been released, was arrested and charged with DUI and criminal endangerment. The firefighter was treated on scene. Well, George Floyd was laid to rest today in Texas following an emotional funeral at the Fountain of Praise Church. Danya Backus reports from Houston.
George Floyd's family members say they hope his death was not in vain.
Everybody know who Big Floyd is now. Everybody going to remember him around the world. He's going to change the world.
A funeral service for the 46-year-old was held Tuesday, 2 weeks and a day after he died in police custody in Minneapolis.
I just want to say to him, I love you, and I thank God for giving me my own personal Superman.
Floyd's death sparked nationwide protest against racism and police brutality.
George Floyd was not expendable. This is why we're here.
Your family's gonna miss you, George, but your nation is going to always remember your name.
Former Vice President Joe Biden addressed the gathering in a pre-recorded message.
We can't turn away. We must not turn away. We cannot leave this moment thinking we can once again turn away from racism that stings at our very soul.
Even as George Floyd was being eulogized here in Houston, demonstrators in other cities were marching in his name.
In New York, a massive crowd surged into lower Manhattan on Tuesday afternoon, shutting down the Brooklyn Bridge in the process. Protesters also gathered in solidarity in Oxford, England. After the funeral, a horse-drawn carriage brought George's body to Pearland Cemetery, where he was buried alongside his mother. Danya Backus, CBS News, Houston.
Well, after Sunday's peaceful protest in downtown Billings demanding racial equality for all, protest organizers say they didn't expect that big of a turnout and they're hopeful for the future. Q2's Shaquille Cozart reports.
Last Sunday, a peaceful protest was held on the Yellowstone County Courthouse lawn in downtown Billings. The protest quickly spread down 27th Street, where people marched and laid on their stomach for the same 8 minutes and 46 seconds that George Floyd was pinned to the ground. The protest brought almost 2,000 people to downtown Billings, which was not expected by the organizers.
We knew it was going to be a large showing, but we didn't know it was going to be around 2,000 people deep. So it was absolutely incredible to see the dedication and commitment from our community come out and show so much love and support for the cause and for us as well.
Ken and Amber were proud of those in attendance for keeping the protest peaceful and beneficial to the community.
Yeah, the best thing about it was that it was all peaceful. There was absolutely no violence, no arrest, no reason for the cops to get involved in a negative way. Everything was positive. Everybody was there to hear the message. Everybody was there to listen, and everybody was there to spread the word.
Ken says he hopes police officers in Billings and throughout the country can use these protests to educate themselves.
My number one hope is that all the cops that were in attendance and were protecting us, they were also listening to the messages as well, because, you know, the main thing we want is police reform throughout the entire country. That includes here too. So hopefully they were listening and hoping they implement some things to reform themselves along with all the other police forces in the country.
The two organizers said they have more plans for the future to educate and help minorities and other groups in the Billings community.
We're going to have a lot of different events for the community to join in on. We'll have different workshops and classes, and we're actually hoping to do some type of retreat as well, because we want to definitely dive into mental illnesses and different people that are affected with those.
In Billings, Shaquille Cozart, MTN News.
All right, thank you, Shaquille. Well, summer school is in session for Billings high schoolers, and it's on the way for elementary and middle schoolers. And all students and parents need to listen up because the superintendent says in-person classes are set to resume on August 24th. Superintendent Upham also wants you to know there are a few more sessions of high school summer classes in July, so there is still time to register. About 10% of the school district's technology devices are still out in the community. Upham says parents should contact their building principal to arrange returns. Well, when school gets back in session this fall, schedules may look a bit different for teachers and parents. Nothing's final quite yet, but administrators plan to reduce the group size of students intermingling throughout the Billings school. Some possible strategies include shifting the times of passing periods, lunch, and dismissal. But right now, Upham is asking parents to let their school principal know if they need special accommodations for students with bigger health risks.
What we need now is we need students and parents who know that they have significant health issues with their children. We need to communicate that with our building administrators because that is going to assist us in our planning. Same thing with faculty as we move forward. So there's some unknowns in some of this, but I really wanted to get this information out as soon as possible so we can do the appropriate planning.
Again, the district plans to resume in-person classes starting on August 24th. The Billings City Council will bring a levy to voters with the goal to not go backwards when it comes to funding public safety. Now, if no action is taken on the budget, the city will have to find a way to make up about $7 million. City Council last night passed the first reading of ballot language that voters will see in the fall. Tonight, Q2's Mitch Legge tells us what the city will do if the levy doesn't pass.
In a special election in the upcoming months, Billings voters will have their say on whether to amend a mill levy previously passed in 2004. If approved, the city would bring in an additional $4 million to help fund police and fire services. However, that would still leave about $3 million to be made up elsewhere, either through cuts or a dip into the reserves. Both chiefs of the departments have told the city council that they don't want to go backwards when it comes to providing services to the citizens. If voters don't pass the levy, the city would have to find a way to cut the budget or dip into the reserves to the tune of about $7 million. Now, if this measure does pass, the city council has said that it won't completely fix the city budget. They seem to be looking toward another ask sometime in 2020. In Billings, Mitch Legge, MTN News.
All right, thank you, Mitch. The ballot language is scheduled for a second reading at a council meeting next Monday. Well, it was a search that came all the way to Montana, but tonight there could be a major break in the case of two missing children who haven't been seen in public for nearly 9 months. Their stepfather is now in custody in Idaho after investigators made a grisly discovery on his property. Jonathan Vigliotti has been following this case and has the startling new developments.
Tonight, Chad Daybell taken away in handcuffs, investigators digging in his backyard. The latest twist in a months-long search for 8-year-old JJ and 17-year-old Tylee.
The investigators and detectives have recovered what's believed to be human remains that are not identified at this time.
Rexburg police say those human remains are now being analyzed. CBS News has learned 20 members of the FBI are now scouring the property. It's the second search of his Idaho home. The stunning developments happening more than 3 months after Daybell's wife Lori Vallow was arrested for defying a court order to prove her kids were alive. These are the last images of JJ, who disappeared on September 23rd. His sister Tylee last seen earlier that month in Yellowstone National Park. Vallow and Daybell married in November, shortly after Daybell's then-wife Tammy suddenly died. Her death is under investigation. The newlyweds moved to Hawaii without the children. Vallow was extradited to Idaho in March. Police confirmed today's search warrant pertains to the disappearance of the two kids and that charges against Daybell are pending. Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News.
And here in Montana, 2 people are dead after a reported homicide in West Kalispell and a police chase that ended in the suspect's death along Highway 35. It all started with a report of a homicide in West Kalispell involving a female victim. A car chase with the suspect then followed, with spike strips being deployed along Highway 35. According to officials, the suspect opened fire on Montana Highway Patrol troopers and sheriff's deputies, who then returned fire. The suspect, a 58-year-old man who appeared to be a Kalispell resident, died on the scene. No law enforcement were injured.
My deputy spike stripped the tires on the suspect vehicle, They traveled another half mile. The vehicle ended up going sideways. The deputy pinned the car. By the initial report, is the suspect opened fire on the deputy, and then the deputy and the Montana Highway Patrol that pulled up there, they returned fire.
All right, and turning to Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire now. Bob, we've seen a good amount of flooding thanks to the snow melt. So how much snow is left to melt?
That is the big question. So we went and found out today just how we doing on the snowpack, and we found this out. You'll notice we have seen a little bit of melting. We're doing quite as well in the upper Yellowstone Valley. Remember, we were over 100% of normal last time we looked at this stuff, and I believe it was in May. Now we're at, here in June, and we're at 84% of normal. So actually, we're not doing quite as well. You can tell we've melted a little bit. But look at the areas in red, under 50% of normal in the southwest corner of the state. But if you want to know where the snow is, you got to go up towards the north by Kalispell. Still anywhere from 146 to 150% of normal. Still got a lot of snow up in them there hills. And also in the area highlighted in yellow, that's where we're actually under 100% of normal, and that's where Billings is right now. So it looks like we've got a little more snow in the melt, but not a lot as other places. We'll have more in your forecast coming up in a few more minutes.
All right, thank you, Bob. Well, more states lift COVID-19 restrictions and more Americans go out to socialize or protest. There's now an upward trend in coronavirus cases. Close to 2 million Americans have been confirmed infected, and U.S. health authorities report more than 110,000 deaths now. Back here at home, Montana reports 6 new COVID-19 cases today. 4 of those in Gallatin County, the other 2 in Bighorn County. We actually told you about those 2 yesterday. Bighorn County reports no new cases today, but another patient has been moved to the hospital. There were 2 mass testing events in Bighorn County today where there are now 25 confirmed cases. That's nearly half of the state's 51 active cases. And a quick check over in Wyoming, there the confirmed cases sit at 760. 600 of those are now recovered. There are no new reported deaths, keeping that number at 17. Well, for those of you who are looking for a new hiking or biking Montana adventure, some Montana history will convert some old rails into some new trails. The Yellowstone Historic Center and Custer-Gallatin National Forest are teaming up to convert the abandoned Union Pacific Railroad line into a hiking and biking trail. This trail will make up an important section of the Greater Yellowstone Trail and will connect to the Continental Divide Trail. That trail will also include interpretive signage along the way. The goal is to open the Yellowstone Short Line Trail next summer. And if you'd like to learn more and help the project along, you can head to the story on ktvq.com. All donations at or above $100 will receive a recognition along that trail. Well, still to come on tonight's 10 o'clock news, fact checking. We're going to dive deeper into a new ad in Montana's governor's race. And in sports, the Mount Rushmore of Montana sports. Scott shows you how you can help decide the best athletes in our state's history.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.